Yeah. 1 second. Yeah, that's fine now.
That's great. I'll just start. Hi everyone, welcome back to those who are returning again. It's kind of good to see that at least a few have come back, and maybe some, and then some that we've not met last week. This is the program that we've got with Be Educated at the moment. Last week, you guys will have seen YHE, and that was the first session that we delivered with you guys. Today, we'll be seeing revision skills. So I'll go through that with my colleague Lauren, who's on the call as well. And then next week it's study skills, and then the final week we've got a budgeting skills workshop. So we'll try to make it as interactive as ever. So we do encourage you, if you can, to either just put things in the chat box as and when, if we ask you questions and things like that, just put them in the chat box, or you can feel free to unmute yourselves and speak, because this is quite a relaxed environment. So we don't want you to just sit there and observe the presentation. We actually want you to take part. So hopefully you'll be able to do that. But yeah, it'll be good. Let me just see. Okay, yeah, revision skills. So just to kind of go through who we are again, I know that Ellie went through it last week for those of you who are here, but we're Greater Manchester Higher, and we're a collaboration of all of these different organisations, and we aim to give impartial advice and guidance to yourselves and schools and colleges, kids who attend those institutions. So some of the partnerships that you might recognise are like Bolton College, like University of Bolton, that's based in Bolton, so all the ones that are based in Bolton right there, and just Bury College. So there's quite a few partnerships that we have there. I won't go through all of them, but just to let you know, that's who we are. What we'll cover today is revision and where to start. We're going to be doing a little quiz for you guys to discover your learning style, and also some top exam techniques as well. And then we've got wellbeing at exam times, and then revision hacks for you. So you guys get like the full package and get to take some few things away as well. I'm going to pass it over to Lauren to do this slide.
Okay, yeah. Hi everyone. So we're going to start with a bit of a warm-up activity, and we're just going to ask, imagine you have an exam in 3 weeks. How would you be feeling? So you can put the number in the chat box if you want. Put number 1 if you'd be feeling really confident, 2 if you'd be quite relaxed, 3 if you'd be a bit stressed, or 4 if you'd be feeling sad about it.
Well, one person saying 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a couple of people saying stressed. Okay, well, hopefully by the end of this presentation, when you've heard a few of our tips and some advice, it would be, it'll help you to feel less stressed in exam. Sorry, I just got distracted because someone called Lauren posted in the chat and I thought it was me. You forget everything and don't know anything. Okay, hopefully then, using these tips that me and Amy are going to give you this afternoon, you'll have some ways to feel a bit less stressed about it.
Okay, let me just go to the next slide. So how would you prepare for revision? So for example, if you told you that you have an exam next week, how would you do, what would you do to prepare for it? Just kind of like put some things in the chat box, and if you can read them out to me, Lauren, that would be great. I find it very, very difficult to access the chat box when I'm presenting. But yeah, how would you prepare for revision? How would you prepare for an exam if we told you that you had one next week?
So we've got somebody saying that they'd use flashcards. Somebody suggested past paper questions, both really good ideas.
Now that's really, really good, you guys. If I like, you've pointed out some really key ways to sort of prepare for it, and some of those things are actually things that we're going to suggest to you later on. So well done to those of you who suggested it. Flashing. So ways that we suggest for you to prepare for it would be perhaps to identify the gaps in your knowledge. So that one way you could obviously do that is to do past papers and find out what you know and what you don't know by getting some feedback from your teachers, perhaps. Creating a positive environment and having a positive mindset has obviously got to take you a long way, especially if your exam is next week. We want you guys to stay positive, as it would help you to succeed in whatever you're doing. And also to sort of acknowledge whether you know the exam criteria well enough. Do you know what's going to be in the exam? Do you know what the exam is about at all? Is it English, science, or maths? So knowing what the exam is and knowing the criteria and what's going to be in the exam will help you to prepare for it, because then you'll know what to revise before you get there. And then the traffic light technique, which is a technique that we're going to introduce to you guys later on. And I'm going to send some materials to Danny, and he can pass it on to you guys if you want. And then you can prepare on your own as well. So yeah, that's the traffic light technique. So don't worry if you've never heard of it, because we will go into it in more detail. So that's how we suggest to prepare for an exam. Oh, I think someone's not muted themselves. So if you want to mute yourself, that would be good, just because we can hear your conversation. Thank you.
Okay, so I just noticed as well that somebody said in the chat box for what they would do to prepare is look at the notes and skim for a couple of days and then wait till the exam. So that's one of the things that we're probably going to help you a bit with, and just like turn that into a bit more active revision. But yeah, we'll talk about that a bit later on. It's good that you're spending the time doing that, but hopefully we can help you like make more productive use of the time. One of the ways to do that is by knowing your learning style. So this can help you to make sure that what you're doing is actually effective, like I've just said. There are 3 main learning styles. So they're known as visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And like you can see on the screen, if you're a visual learner, you kind of learn by seeing. Auditory is better by listening, and kinesthetic is if you have to be doing things and you enjoy demonstrations. So we're going to do a short quiz over the next few slides. I think there's about 5 questions, and it'll help you to see which kind of learner you are. And then afterwards, we'll give you some tips on how you can best revise based on that. Okay, so the first question, sorry, I should have said, if anyone's got like a pen or paper, or if you can make a note of this on your phone, or if you want to keep a note of your answers in the chat box, whatever's easiest for you. But it'd be useful if you can keep a note of the amount of A's, B's and C's that you've got, so you can add them up at the end. So the first question is, you prefer lessons where A, there's something to look at, so a picture or a diagram, B, you can discuss things with your classmates, or C, you can do something practical or move around. So if you've got somewhere to make a note of whether you're A, B or C, that'd be really useful.
Just move on to the next slide, sorry. Hopefully you have enough time to make some notes. So the next scenario is, when I'm studying, I often A, doodle or draw little pictures, B, sing or hum to myself, or C, fiddle with things like my pen or rubber. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next one.
So the third question is, when learning a new skill, I prefer to A, watch somebody show me how to do it. B, have somebody explain it to me. Or C, just get on with it and try it out for myself.
Okay, moving on to the next one. When I'm receiving directions, I find it helpful to look at a map. B, prefer to listen to somebody telling me. Or C, would rather go and try the route. Okay, lovely. I'm going to move on to the next slide.
Okay, so the fifth question is, when I meet somebody for the first time, I'm more likely to remember A, their face, B, their name, or C, the situation I met them in.
Okay, hopefully everyone's had a bit of time to pick one.
Okay, so if you could add up the number of A's, B's and C's you got, or if you can remember whether you got kind of mostly A's, mostly B's or mostly C's. And that'll tell you, that was a short quiz, you know, we're not going to keep you all evening. You can find longer quizzes if you want to like go more in depth about that. But just as a brief overview, if you got mostly A's, then you're likely to be a visual learner. And if you got mostly B's, auditory, mostly C's, kinesthetic. So I think if you just go forward slightly, Amy, I think these flip round into some top tips.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so if you're a visual learner, some things that you might want to do to help you out are things like making mind maps, doing practice tests, making revision cards, or watching demo videos, because they're all things where you get to look and learn at the same time. For auditory learners, it might be more useful to do things where you're speaking and listening, like repeating facts out loud to yourself, maybe make up a song about it, tell people about what you've learned. You might enjoy listening to podcasts about things. And if you're a kinesthetic learner, so if you got mostly C's, then it's quite important to make sure you have a good study environment, because kinesthetic learners tend to be more easily distracted and like to move around a lot more. It might be helpful to teach others. Make sure you take regular breaks and be as active as you can with your learning. So whether that's like making models or doing role plays and acting things out, hopefully there's some things that can help you out to revise.
Lovely. Just going to. So we've got some, now that we've covered some of your learning styles, and hopefully this will kind of help you to kind of take away some of the things that we'll be covering in the next like few slides, because depending on your learning style, you might actually find some of them quite useful to take on board. I know somebody else put in the chat that they were a visual learner, so that's good to know for yourself, and just to kind of like as an example for the next couple of slides. But yeah, we've got some 5 revision hacks that we're going to show you and talk you through, and hopefully it will be useful. You'll take some away. The first one is active learning. So this isn't just about sort of like highlighting things, but it's also like meant to be a way to get you to think about what you're doing. So science tells us the most effective revision techniques are the ones that make us think about the information that we're trying to learn, so that we're not just reading through it. I know someone put in the chat before that they would make notes and just kind of skim over them, and then like I think was apply that or read it again before the exam. So and this kind of like is slightly the opposite, where you're reading the information but you're really taking it in. So it might be that you kind of use mind maps to help you remember the information a little bit more, or using tables, because some people quite like using tables like an example would be pros and cons, or just like when you're revising maths would be quite good, or science, to use tables, because then you can break things up into little chunks and little facts and put them in there, so it's easier to remember, and it's just the relevant words that you're remembering, or relevant dates. So that could be good for history. Flashcards, I know somebody said that they use flashcards. They would use flashcards as a way to prepare for an exam, and that's a great one, because flashcards, you can make like notes and write them out, and then after that revisit them when you need to. For example, if you're revising for English, would be good to write down important quotes that you want to remember, so that it's a little bit more, you're kind of engaging with the information a little bit more, and you're not just reading a book. I know that when I'm reading a book, if you quiz me afterwards and I've just read the book, I won't be able to tell you like most of what I've read, because I'm not really engaging with the learning style that fits me. I'm more of a kinesthetic learner. So if I read something, I'd like to like kind of act it out, or to like see it in person, or like kind of like maybe see a movie about it, like engage in it in a different way, so it's not just the one form, and it's not just the one format that you're doing it in. So learning what you're knowing what your learning style is going to help you to kind of figure out which one of these active learning styles would be good. So hopefully that made sense. I know I just rambled on, but hopefully it made sense to someone. So I'm going to hand over to Lauren to explain the next part.
Okay, the second tip is called spacing. So don't be put off if this looks a bit scientific with the graph and everything. It's just quite an easy way to show you what we're talking about when we say that research suggests that we're up to 30% more likely to remember something if we revisit it regularly. So I'm sure you've all been in a situation where maybe you've had a test or an exam the next day, and you leave it till the night before, and then you suddenly think, I'm just going to try and revise everything now. Whereas if you are in a situation where you've maybe got a lot of exams coming up, you really need to start in advance so that it gives you that time to put everything in, and also to go back and revise it as well. So as you can see here in this little graph, it shows that when you first learn something, you remember it for about 3 days and then it's gone. Whereas if you keep coming back to it, the more you go over that information, the longer it stays in your long-term memory for. So if you are preparing for some big exams like at the end of the year, or tests or exams in the future, then that's why it's really important to start early and keep coming back to things. Because the more you tell your brain something, the more it's going to think, oh, this is important actually. They keep mentioning this again. Maybe I should remember it. So hopefully that's a useful one to use as well.
The next one is teaching others. So when you're teaching someone and information, so the idea is, if you teach someone something, is you'll have to be very confident about the information that you're teaching them, so that they understand what you're saying. So it could be the case that whether you have like kind of like a study buddy, and you like to teach each other something, whether they're really good at science and you're really good at maths, so you're teaching them the math stuff and they're teaching you the science stuff. It's a great way to kind of make sure that you're teaching it in a way that they understand it, and also kind of like you're very confident about, you know, like the gaps in a way to identify the gaps. Because if they ask you a question about, for example, geometry, and you don't know much about it, it means perhaps you need to go away and study it. So it's a great way to, in a way, sneakily identify the gaps in your knowledge, but equally also to demonstrate how confident you are in that subject. And one way to think of this is your teachers, they kind of teach you day in and day out, and they've gone to university and they've got degrees and they've trained and stuff. They have to teach various students throughout the day, and so they have to be very confident in what they know, because they've got different people in their classrooms who have got different learning styles, who've got different learning needs as well. So they need to be able to explain the information to someone, to everybody, so that they understand it, and then they could be able to take that information and sit the exam and do well. So like obviously they're very confident in what they know. So what I'm trying to say with that, I feel like I've just confused myself a little bit there. What I'm trying to say is like they're very confident at what they do because they constantly keep practicing the knowledge and also keep revisiting it. So you teaching others will help you to become a lot more confident in the information that you're learning because you're allowing somebody else to take that knowledge on board. So that's teaching others. Hopefully that will be useful. I think I recommend you using it.
Yeah, and after you've taught somebody else, why not test yourself as well? So the fourth example would be to, like it says, test yourself. This could be either doing past papers or maybe something smaller. If the thought of doing a whole past paper, either you haven't got time or it stresses you out a bit thinking about the exam so soon, you could even just write little questions for yourself on the back of revision cards or on a bit of paper, and then write the answers on the other side and then fold it over and see if you got the correct answer. That's really useful for subjects where you're learning facts. So whether you're studying languages or science, maths, things like that, you can just flip it over and see if you got the right answer. Equally by doing past papers, so if you've got an essay to write for a subject like English or psychology, then it might be really helpful to actually test yourself by seeing whether you can provide enough detail, maybe by writing a practice essay, and hopefully your teachers wouldn't mind having a look over that as well because you've done the extra work to help yourself. So I'm sure your teachers will be willing to give you a bit of feedback on that.
So the next one is the Pomodoro technique. So as it says on the board, like don't let it kind of put you off. It's kind of simple. The name Pomodoro is, I think it means like tomato in Italian. So that's how it came about. There's a whole history about it. If you're interested, go Google it. So how it works is you would set a timer for 25 minutes, and after 25 minutes of revising or studying, you would take a 5-minute break, and then you would repeat the timer again, but this time for slightly longer. So you might go for 30 minutes and then go away and have a 10-minute break, and then repeat it again for 45 minutes in studying, and then take a 15-minute break. In those 15 minutes, you could literally do anything. Try not to get distracted, obviously, by maybe perhaps going on your phone and then overstaying those 15 minutes. And then the idea is you make a note of the things that distract you whilst you're studying, and then removing those distractions. So whether it be your siblings or your phone constantly pinging or the noise outside, you make a note of it and then try to eliminate it if you can. This technique, my little sister, who's currently in year 11, uses it. Well, she used to use it when she was studying for her exams, and it was quite useful. You used to like see her revising, and then 1 minute she'd be on her phone. So it's quite a nice way to like get little breaks every now and then, so you're just not constantly sitting down all the time and hitting the books for about 6 hours, and then by that time you're kind of over revision and you never want to see another English paper again. So it's a good way to get little short bursts of breaks. So next we've got a little activity for you. Hopefully you'll be very kind of interactive and you'll help us to do it. It's what makes a good revision environment or a study environment. I know that some of you are probably in year 9 or something and aren't even thinking about, you know, exams whatsoever. So we'll call it a good sort of study environment. So in this activity that we've got, there's some things around environment, some things around activities and objects, and all you have to do is tell us which one you think is helpful when studying and what isn't helpful. And then we've also got an in-between section as well. I'm going to take my screen off because I don't think I can operate whilst I've got full screen on. So I'm going to remove it, and you can just type in the chat box which one of these you think is helpful. So for example, we've got staying up late. If you think that's helpful, just like type yes or no, or obviously depends for that.
Yeah, so people are saying no for staying up late. Yeah, quite a lot of people saying no for that one.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad you're saying no. So yeah, staying up late would be classed as a no, just because we do want you guys to stay rested and to do well the next day. And when you're tired, you won't be able to function. What about staying hydrated? I'll let you do the next one, Lauren.
A lot of people are saying yes for this one.
Okay, lovely jubbly. Everybody's wise. I'll let you pick one, Lauren.
Okay, how about working with friends? I think this one's an interesting one to see what people think. Yeah, one person thinks it's helpful.
Yeah.
Someone said depends. I'd be interested to know why it depends. Depends on the person. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, some people might be quite disciplined and quite able to have like a meeting with their friends and be able to actually stick to revision. Other people might call it a revision session, and then after 3 hours you realize you've actually not talked about school whatsoever. So it can be really helpful to work with your friends, but it does require that extra bit of discipline, I think. Okay, I'll let you take one, Amy.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Even I get distracted to this day. I've left school. Environment, where shall we put it? Is it helpful, not helpful, or depends on the person?
Yeah, most people say no for this one.
No. Okay. Yeah. I think it could go on no. Although like most people do tend to like find that revising or studying in a loud environment quite distracting. Some people might actually find it, quite helpful to have background noise. So it could depend on the person, but because you've put not helpful, I'll leave it there. But I would also say it kind of also depends. I live in a very, very loud household. There's quite a few people in it. I'm kind of used to studying with background or like working with background noise around me. So yeah, it's one of those. I'll let Lauren pick the next one.
How about textbooks and past papers? Yeah, I've got people saying yes for this one. Did have someone once saying no because they found it really stressful using past papers, but I think if you find it stressful using past papers, you're going to be stressed in the exam. So it's best to get used to them, and then that's going to help you to feel less stressed because it won't be something new and scary anymore.
Yeah, definitely. What about video games? Oh gosh, not the one icon. What about video games? Oh, now it's all removed. Is that helpful? Not helpful, or depends?
We've got yes when having a break, which I think is a really good point. Other people saying no.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to leave it on it depends on the person, because as someone said, it is helpful for when taking a break. We don't obviously recommend studying and playing a video game at the same time. I think that's kind of like humanly impossible. So don't do that. But I think it would depend on the person as a way of relaxing. Some people find video games quite helpful to kind of relax with. So I'm going to leave it there. But yeah, I'll let you pick the next one, Lauren.
I will take taking regular breaks. Yeah, a lot of people saying yes for this one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would agree. Take a
The
regular break.
Pomodoro technique, it is quite good to take regular breaks. It isn't. Sorry. What about, we'll pick quiet spaces, a quiet space. Where are we going with this one?
Yeah, people seem to think yes for a quiet space.
Okay. Yeah, we can put it on helpful. I think that's kind of like what studying is traditionally like associated with, a quiet space in the library. But I'd like to think that some people can find it helpful to study, like not find it unhelpful to study in a quiet environment, because sometimes it just seems a little bit too quiet for them, and they'd rather study in a place that is somewhat busy and has some levels of, I don't know, noise. So it may depend on the person, but I do think that is traditionally seen to be helpful to study in a quiet environment. So we'll leave it there. What about practicing mindfulness? Practicing mindfulness, where do we think that would go?
But yes, again for this one.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And not just mindfulness, it's not just about sort of meditating. Some people, like we said before, find it helpful to relax by playing video games or playing football or going for a jog or going for a walk. That's just one way to sort of like implement sort of like mental well-being into your study and into your schedule as well. So if it's not mindfulness that you're kind of leaning towards, doing other things like playing video games or going for a walk and going for jogs can be quite helpful as well. So well done for doing that. That was quite good. Thank you for taking part. So I'll go back to the slideshow mode and, oh gosh, not video. I'm trying to get my slides back on from current slide. Thank you.
Okay, so now that you know a few tips and hopefully a few like revision hacks, and you also know the way that you revise best, I'm going to think about what makes a good revision timetable, because it's all well and good knowing how you learn best or knowing what you've got coming up, but really you need a good structure. And I know we said revision timetable, but this could also just be like a general study timetable if you've not got exams coming up, might even help you with your learning at home as well. So a good revision timetable has breaks to help you refresh, which we've already spoken about. Also has a balance of subjects, so don't just put your favourite subjects in there and accidentally leave out the ones that you don't really like that much. Make sure you have got a bit of everything, because that's what you're going to have to do for your exams or any tests that you've got coming up. And similarly, you've got a balance of subjects when you're in school. You don't just have normally a full day of English or a full day of history. So make sure you're changing things up a bit to just keep your brain active and energetic as well. Make sure you include past papers. We've talked about the importance of those. So past papers are really good at helping you prepare if you have got exams coming up, and also space your learning out. So as I just said, instead of doing a full day of English or a full day of science, try and spread things out a bit and put things in like groups of 1 or 2 hours at a time. Yeah, somebody's asked, I'm in college, but guessing it's kind of the same thing. Yeah, definitely. So those of you who are in college as well, all of this still still applies. Revision skills essentially are a skill for life. So even if you're in school, college, or university, I made revision timetables in university as well. So yeah, it is a bit of a life skill. So don't worry if you're not still in school, it applies to everybody. And the most important point is that it works for you. So if you know that you usually take part in, say, a session like this on a Tuesday afternoon, don't put that you're going to revise science at this time, because it's going to clash and that doesn't work for you, and it might just put you off following the timetable in general. So make sure it works around what you've already got planned in as well.
So next, we've got the traffic light technique, which I did mention at the beginning. So the traffic light technique works in a very kind of simple way, although it might look a little bit complicated at first glance. So how it works is, red is a topic that you know very little of and you require a lot of revision and you're perhaps not as confident in that. And then amber or yellow is you know some parts of it and you could do with a review to get a fuller understanding of the topic or the subject. And green is you are confident in these topics but just need to refresh your memory a little bit in order to become more confident. So we're going to show you in the next slide sort of like how it goes. I will send Danny an example of this and hopefully you guys will have access to it and you can do your use the traffic light techniques to kind of apply to your own learning at the moment. You would pick a subject, for example, like maths or history, and then think of the different topics within that subject. So for example, if it's maths, you might think of algebra, angles, fractions. I'm just going off what's on here, and then you would write them down and kind of see which one you're comfortable with. For example, if it's trigonometry, you're perhaps not as comfortable with that and you're not as confident in what it contains, but for angles you're actually okay and you just need to review it a little bit more in order to get a better understanding. But statistics and fractions, you're actually very confident. That doesn't mean then you'll never go back and visit statistics and fractions, because your knowledge in that might obviously fade over time. So you'd obviously still go back and revisit it, but just perhaps not spend as much time with those ones as you would perhaps on the red ones that you have there. And so that's how the traffic light technique would work. So you just write down the subject that you're studying and then write down the topics within within that subject. So if you can do it for English, you can do it for history, you can even do it for science and all the other ones that you've got in your school timetable or college timetable at the moment. So it'll help you to kind of break down and figure out where the gaps in your knowledge are and where you're kind of a little bit more confident. So to help you progress on to the next one. So whether it be implementing more past papers or creating a study timetable, that then means you're studying a lot more of these topics, a lot more of these topics. And so it just helps you to kind of mix it up a little bit. I will send Danny the kind of like the example so that you guys can do it yourselves as well. So that's how the traffic light technique works.
Okay, so we've already mentioned exam practice, but I'm just going to give a bit of an analogy that explains why exam practice or why past papers are so important. So imagine that you've been asked to take part in a bike race in 2 weeks' time, but you don't actually know how to ride a bike. So what do you do to try and teach yourself how to ride a bike? So you might watch YouTube videos of other people riding a bike. You might read books about how to ride a bike. You might learn about the theory of it. But really, until you get on that bike yourself, you're not going to know whether you're actually able to ride it or not. And that's what we use to explain why past papers are important and why they're so useful. Because when you're doing exams, you've got to adapt to certain criteria, like there might be a certain number of marks for each question or a certain amount of time that you've got to finish the paper in. So really, until you actually practice an exam in that format and under timed conditions, you're not going to know how well you'll be able to perform in that exam. So it might be that you know absolutely everything you need to know for history and you've got all the facts and you can write your longer answers. But when it comes to the exam, it takes you way too long and you only actually get through the first few questions. So if you do a practice paper in advance to check that, then you can learn how to get a bit quicker at planning your answers, or which bits that you could crop out that aren't really worth any marks. So that's just a bit of a story to help you understand why past papers are important. I know a few of you mentioned them as well when we asked earlier, so it's good to see that you're already aware of that, and maybe already some of you have tried that.
Sorry.
Okay, so the final thing to talk about is your well-being at exam time. So it might sound a bit obvious, but it's really important to actually look after yourselves, whether it's exam time or even if you've not got exams, just when you're studying as well. So we know it's really difficult at the minute when you're trying to study at home. You might have siblings who are studying at home as well. You might have family members who are trying to work from home. Everybody's in a different situation, and everybody's got kind of the different struggles. So just make sure you're looking after yourself as well. And that could be by keeping active. So if you get to the middle of the day and you're feeling really tired and drained, why not go for a quick walk or have a run around or have a dance around the house? Just anything to get like that oxygen flowing back around your body and make yourself feel a bit more awake and prepared for the afternoon. Make sure you're eating and sleeping well. So instead of relying on things like energy drinks or sugary snacks, try to get a bit more of a balanced diet if you can, because that's going to help you as well to just feel a bit more stable, and also avoid any like sugar crashes or caffeine crashes. Also making time to relax, so that can be whatever relaxing means to you, whether it's reading or whether you like to do things like yoga or mindfulness, whether relaxing means playing video games or just going and having a chat with somebody else in your household. Make sure you fit in time for that as well. And finally, be kind to yourself and ask for help. So, like I said, everybody's struggling with different things at the moment, but everybody just wants the best for you, whether that's your parents or carers, anybody else that you live with, your friends or your teachers. You've got a lot of people that you can ask for help if you need it. So, don't feel like you have to keep anything to yourself.
So
Right,
that's the end of our.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's all right. I mean, there's not much to say for this other than, has anybody got any questions? So I think we've covered everything that we were going to cover. Has anybody got any questions at the moment for us, maybe about those learning styles or any revision hacks that you didn't quite understand, or just any more general questions about studying at home or studying for exams? You're welcome to either unmute yourselves like Amy said earlier, or put anything in the chat box if you do have anything.
I think my Wi-Fi is a little bit delayed, so apologies. That's the reason why we clashed there.
Okay, but nothing in the chat box yet. So oh, sorry. Yes, we have. There's me rushing through. What would you recommend is the best way of learning alone?
Best way to learn alone. I would obviously recommend creating a revision or study timetable if you can. Well, 100% I think you should be able to create one yourself, whether it's just kind of like a little bullet point throughout the day or throughout the week that you make. Would be really, really good. But I would also, like we mentioned in the slide or presentation, taking regular breaks during your study time would be great, because then you don't want to sit at your desk or you don't want to sit at the library for 6 hours on end studying the same thing, or just kind of like studying all the time. Make sure you're taking a break every hour, and then either going for a walk or doing something else that's like not related to your studies, so that you are kind of like keeping your brain engaged with different things, and you're breaking up your day a little bit. Otherwise, trust me, you will genuinely hate studying. You'll be like, nope, I'm not doing it anymore. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, because they think when it comes to studying, they just have to like open up a book and stay there for like 10 hours and they can't move. So make sure you break up your day and do things that are that are like fun in between, whether that's chatting to your friends or kind of like going for a walk or doing just something really, really random and different to what you're studying. It'll help you to stay engaged and kind of like a lot more lively, I would say. I don't know if you've got any other advice though, Lauren.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with everything you said. And also, when it comes to studying, so I think I'm somebody who's actually better at studying alone rather than studying with friends, because I just get too distracted. And my favourite thing to do is just to make loads of revision cards and make them look pretty, whether that's with like highlighters or stickers or anything like that. I just actually find it quite relaxing. So I think the most important thing is just finding out what works for you. Make sure you've got like a bit of a routine going, and also, just like Amy said, make sure you've got a plan for what you're going to revise, because you might sit down with really good intentions of I'm going to revise for an hour now. But if you've not really planned what you're going to do, then you'll spend more time trying to decide what to do, which is why it's important to have like that structure and maybe a revision timetable as well.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see any more questions, so it might be worth moving to the next slide.
We've got some evaluations for you guys, and last week we did encourage you to click on the link and do them. We're going to ask you to click on the link and do them this time as well. I think if you can put them in the chat box, Lauren, that would be great. Yeah, just simply click on it, do the evaluation. That would help us a lot. Just be honest about how you found today's session. We don't see the evaluations coming through, so we're not going to know what you say, but it just helps us to kind of like review the presentations and the content and see if it's useful for the next lot of people that we deliver it to. So it'd be really, really nice if you can do it. And yeah, that's on the evaluation link. Lauren's put it in the chat box now, so please do click on it and do it before we end this session. Oh, that's it. Thought there was an ask us like an ask us thing that you can click on, but never mind. So that's the end of our presentation. We've got
Put the link to that in the chat box as well, actually, our Ask Us platform.
Yeah, that's a platform where both myself and Lauren and our other colleagues are on. So you can click on that and literally just ask us any questions, whether it be about study skills, student finance, university life, student life, those kinds of stuff. You can just ask us any questions that you do have. We'd be more than happy to help you out. But yeah, that's the end of it. If you've got any more questions, just feel free to put it in. But if not, then we'll head out at like 25 past. I think it's going to be 24 past in a minute, looking at my phone.
Somebody said thank you for the presentation. You're welcome. Thank you for coming, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Lovely. Yeah, I think that's about it, really. But yeah, thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next session for study skills. And yeah, see you next week on the 23rd for a study skills session. Have a good evening, everyone, and keep safe. Bye.